Mirrorless cameras have opened the door to easily adapting vintage lenses to a modern platform. With most of these lenses, mounting the lens to an adapter is a really straightforward process. However, Canon's old FD lenses throw us a bit of a curveball. So what makes an FD mount conversion different from other manual lenses? Well, ultimately this comes down to how the FD lens's aperture is controlled and how mount adapters deal with this. So in this demonstration, I'm using a cheap, as in $16, FOTC FD to RF adapter. I bought it on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description for anyone that's interested in picking one up. In my experience, albeit limited with only one FD mount lens and only one of these adapters, it's worked perfectly fine for everything I've thrown at it, which again is just one lens. However, what I'm covering in this video isn't inherent to just this adapter, and it's going to be the case if you use a more expensive FD lens mount adapter, and it will apply regardless of what mount you're adapting the lens to, whether it's Canon's RF, Nikon Z, Sony E, or whatever. So to understand all of this, let's take a look at the back of an FD lens to see what the situation is. Here we'll find two levers, a short one and a long one. The short one is how the camera tells what aperture the lens has been set to. At least this would be the case if the lens was mounted on an FD mount SLR. You can see this lever move when you rotate the aperture ring. Now remember, these lenses were designed for manual focus SLRs, so they focus and meter wide open. But of course, the camera needs to know what aperture you've actually selected in order to adjust the meter properly. Now the long lever is what actually closes the aperture. The camera actuates this just before the shutter's opened or when the depth of field preview button has been pressed. When the actuation lever is in its resting position, the aperture on the lens will always be wide open. It's only when this lever is moved over that the lens actually stops down. And this is of course where the problem occurs. So on an FD mount camera, the actuating lever is kept retracted unless it's actually being used. Therefore, an FD lens can always be mounted or removed without jamming the lever or aperture. On an FD mount adapter, the same thing has to be done. The adapter has to actuate the long lever in order to make the lens stop down. Only this time, it doesn't have a servo to drive the action or the actuation pin automatically. Instead, you have to turn a lock-unlock aperture control ring on the adapter. And here's where the problem comes in. If you mount a lens while the adapter is in the locked position instead of the open position, then the lens's long activation lever ends up on the wrong side of the adapter's actuation pin. In this position, you first of all can't rotate the lock-unlock ring at all, and second of all, the lens won't be able to stop down, so you'll never be able to control the aperture. The correct way to use one of these adapters is to first rotate the lock-open ring on the mount adapter to the open position. Then line up the alignment marks, seat the lens as you normally would, and lock it into place on adapter. Finally, you can rotate the aperture lock ring so that it is in the closed or locked position, and this will stop down the lens and give you control over the lens's aperture. Now, dismounting the adapter is done just in the reverse order. Rotate the aperture actuation lever on the adapter to the open position, and then unlock and remove the lens from the adapter. So that's how you mount an FD lens on an FD mount adapter. I hope you found this useful or at least interesting. If you did, let me know by hitting that like button. If this kind of thing seems like it might be your kind of thing, please consider subscribing if you're not already. Finally, if you'd like to directly support this channel and future content like this, please consider hitting that thanks button if you can. It's always appreciated. And of course, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.